Any further ado, I now wish to call upon MEC Lebogang Maile to unpack what could have constituted this commission.
Actually, okay. Thank you very much. Am I audible?
No, that was just a rehearsal.
Oh,
it's just the direct. So can I say the motion is perfect? Everybody, can I just check? Do we have audio with Lupi?
I mean, I'm giving you
Inquiry. I'm Lupi Ngaisa, though I have a very short role this morning. Please allow me to acknowledge the MEC for Human Settlements, Urban Planning and Cooperative Governments and Traditional Affairs, MEC Lebogang Maile, who is joined by the SALGA President, Councillor Thembi Isimelane Nkadimeng, Professor Trevor Fowler, who is Chairperson of the committee, and Dr. Sydney Mufumari. And last but not least, the moderator for this session, veteran broadcaster Tabiso Tima. You can join the proceedings of this conversation on various social media or digital platforms. GD COGTA, that would be for your Twitter. Facebook, we are available at Gauteng COGTA, and YouTube, we are available and on the Gauteng COGTA YouTube channel. Ladies and gents, without any further ado, I now wish to call upon the MEC Lebogang Maile, who is going to give us a brief overview as to why we are here this morning. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Let me start by acknowledging and appreciating the presence of our guests who are going to be part of our panel. They've already been introduced. So for the sake of time, I won't repeat, but they are all well known because they have played a significant role in our society, and they continue to at different times. So thank you very much for joining us today. We, as the provincial government of Gauteng, we had appointed a committee of inquiry, a committee of seasoned experts and practitioners who were led by Professor Trevor Fowler to look at the affairs of local government. I remember, Titi, in one of your shows, you were very skeptical about this committee of inquiry. You actually thought it's a waste of time and money, We know what are the problems. We must just deal with the problems and stop doing all sorts of things. And I said at the time, yes, we know some of the problems, but we should also be able to deal with these problems systematically, and we shouldn't be all over. So we ask you to moderate, because we know you're very critical and skeptical about this. So we didn't want someone who would be nice to us, because we are not allergic to criticism. So we thought we should call you here. So thank you very much. So the committee was commissioned to investigate the slow progress in the overall performance and institutional development of municipalities in the province, and recommend alternative, cost-effective, comprehensive and systematic approach to municipal governance for better service delivery outcomes. Their work was interrupted, unfortunately, by COVID-19 pandemic, but they have been able to complete their task and have presented their report with its findings and recommendations, which have been discussed and adopted by the Provincial Executive Council. The Constitution, the relevant legislation, policies and guidelines, whether and to what extent Gauteng municipalities are fulfilling their constitutional mandate as outlined in Section 152 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, whether and to what extent the Gauteng provincial government within the systems of cooperative governance is fulfilling its constitutional responsibilities in terms of Section 154 subsection 1 of the Constitution, which dictates, amongst others, that provincial governments by legislative and other measures must support and strengthen the capacity of municipalities to meet their obligations. And the committee has made several observations, findings and recommendations, which are contained under chapters of financial viability, institutional capability, good governance, public participation, and service delivery. We have circulated the report so that some of the observations that they've made, we might not have the opportunity here to repeat them. You can be able to refer to that. And there's, in the main, 12 issues have been identified, which provide a shift in how we think, or rather it will provide a shift in how we want to think about challenges facing our municipalities. And these can be summed up as follows. Firstly, the committee believes that we need to have a dedicated vision for each region, because each region is unique. Each region has got its own challenges. So we must not use a one size fits all approach. So we will be doing that. We have already started thinking about it in the through our human settlement plans. What we are doing, we're building what we call mega human settlements. But that's not enough. There are other elements like economic activities and all that. So we have also, I think a few years ago, when I was still MEC for Economic Development, adopted what we call a corridor approach to say in each region, what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses of that region, and based on that, let's put together a plan. So we welcome that a suggestion from the panel, and we think it's workable. But the second issue they are raising, it's leadership and its lack thereof. So there are municipalities that are doing well because of leadership. But most of our municipalities that are not doing well, you find that there is an issue of leadership deficit. And in fact, in most cases, this is the cause of problems. And I think the President of SALGA will understand this very well, and she would agree with us. And then the other issue, it's developmental local government versus compliance. How do you strike the balance? if you have there's a municipality TTA, I won't mention, every Friday, President, they steal the electricity cable.
Yeah.
Or they cut it off.
Yeah.
Every week.
Yeah.
You know why? So that there can be emergency procurement, because the communities want electricity. So when you do emergency procurement, it means you don't follow process, and then that's where issues of corruption comes in and all that. But on this issue, we're saying our local government must be developmental in approach. It must, at the same time, ensure that there is also compliance to the laws, to the constitution. Local government, I think in the main, is governed by 3 pieces of legislation. The Systems Act, the Structures Act, and the Finance.
MFMA.
Yes, the MFMA. So one local government, and it's highly regulated.
Yes.
So that's another issue. It's highly regulated. This can be an advantage. It can also be a disadvantage in certain instances. But we think that we are not calling for the lowering of the standards. If anything, we're saying these pieces of legislation must help us to strengthen governance. And the committee is also saying that accountability and oversight was found to be lacking in many areas of municipal operations. This includes legislative issues, oversight, and they were not able to also submit certain reports which are required. As I've said, that this sphere is highly regulated, and there's a number of things that we have to attend to, and they are not in certain instances. So these 12 issues are issues that have been identified across all municipalities. There are municipal specific issues. I know when I saw him here, I know it's going to ask me, and please don't ask me today. We've got Dr. Fuma and Professor, and we've got the President Osara. That's why we called them, so that I don't have to take difficult questions today. I was telling Titi the same thing. So, and then there's issues of national and provincial government support. Was found to be incorrectly applied in many instances where provincial and national government have been focused on monitoring and evaluating municipalities rather than providing support. So this is a kind of a big brother, big sister approach. When the province comes into the municipality, they ask you, why have you not done this? Why do you do this? Instead of saying, let's work together, let's plan together. So we also accept this advice, and we've since started to adopt a different approach, because usually, and I think Dr. Kumadi, and by the way, the professor, he was minister, local government.
Of course.
Yes, and then he was ABC, so they have drafted this
Yes,
law.
yes,
And
yes.
what they were saying at the time was this government, provincial government support. But in most cases, people think when you say provincial, you are referring to COGTA and the ends of COGTA. And that's why even the society, things don't work. I say the MEC of COGTA and all that, but when in fact the responsibility is provincial. Every MEC, every premier must be able to explain what is it that their province is doing to provide support to municipalities, so that this is not just left to COGTA, because COGTA is just a department. It's not, in most cases, it's just a small department. It does not even have a lot of resources, because it's a coordinating department, providing oversight. It's not the same as anywhere. So it might not be properly structured to do that. But then there's an issue about the future of district municipalities in Gauteng, which the committee believes that it must be resolved in relation to their powers and functions. We've got the two in Gauteng, West Rand and City Bay. And we agree that we have to do that because they are not sustainable. And then the political stability to enhance development was a finding that indicated that municipal performance declined sharply when political instability was present. Here we must also look at how we regulate, monitor, and hold to account coalition governments or arrangements, because it seems this is going to be a prominent feature of our democracy. We've seen what it did in Fani, so we agree on this. And then on cooperative governance was found to be lacking in a manner that concentrated the efforts and resources of government to collectively build strong municipalities. The collaborative, community-centric developmental approach of the district development model should help us address this challenge.
Okay, so because they just cut the ENC broadcast now, because it says they can't hear him. This video.
The 1998 white paper has long been overtaken by new realities that render the current model for municipalities unworkable. So this is a point we would have to take up further with SALGA, work with the ministers of finance and cooperative governance at the national level. Because it means we are calling for the amendment of the laws. So if we're calling for an amendment of the laws, we ought to answer the question, what exactly has to be changed? So there's still a lot of work to be done to be able to, we can even sponsor amendments through our reps in the NCOP. But we would want SALGA to work with us. And I'm sure, because the president of SALGA is a mayor himself, she would agree with a lot of the issues that have been raised here. So transparent, fair, value for money, competitive procurement. Here we're talking as well to ethics, relates to many problems encountered in procurement and the tendering processes at municipalities. The rollout of the open tender system across all municipalities in the province should help address this. So one of the things we say is that we want to introduce an open tender system. We would like SALGA to support us, to convince, because it's something we can't impose on municipalities. We must engage them. But we think there is no reason why municipalities and provincial government can't have an open tender system, and nothing must be hidden. That will help us to deal with a lot of issues, including irregular expenditure, wasteful expenditure, corruption, and moving faster. So in conclusion, TT, I promised you that I will finish in 10 minutes. I hope I'll finish within 10 minutes, so that we have enough time with the panel. Today it's not our day, and that's why we didn't call a press conference, because we could have called the press conference, but we thought, what value would that bring? Because we just announced. But if we get colleagues who are not working in our space, but who have a better understanding, it will add value even to the public discourse. So the Committee of Inquiry was an exercise in soliciting an alternative view on how to resolve our many challenges at local government level. It served the purpose of confirming the validity of some of the current strategic work of the province, because there's also a trust deficit between us politicians and the public. So sometimes when we say we want to solve certain things, or when we say this is the correct, I mean the problem, we are not believed. We know, and that's why in solving it, we should be open, and we should not be allergic to criticism, and we should be the first to admit when there's problems, and we must also solve those problems, and that's what we want to do today. So the province has already started the process of implementing some of these findings. In fact, this report was given to us, Prof, when? 2 months, 3 months ago? Yeah, in October. Then there's been a lot of process taking it through the expo process. We've developed an implementation plan so that when we come out in the public, we don't just talk about the problem. At some point, we must come back and say how far are we in resolving all these 12 issues that have been raised. This report is also assisting the province to set out a fresh approach to the incoming political leadership. As you know, there's local government elections in a few months' time. So those who will be coming, as part of the election, Comrade President, we would advise that in our province, this becomes part of the package, and it becomes part of the lessons, and they don't repeat the same mistake as those who came before. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This is the report which the Committee of Inquiry under the able leadership of Professor Fowler has submitted, and we have accepted all the recommendations, including the ones that are saying we are not doing certain things, because we are not about defending. Titi, you can take over your platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much there to MEC Lebogang Maile. Well, you know, when you get a phone call from a politician and it's not a hostile call, you must be deeply suspicious. Little did I know I was being neutralized here. Oh, yeah. So now you know. So now I know. But yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, and for inviting me as well to be a part of this. We are the people who, of course, have the responsibility of holding government to be accountable. And at the same time, if we are going to be playing that role, then we also are called upon to, engage and become actively involved in these processes and understand what exactly it is that you're dealing with. It's easy to assume that we know what you're dealing with on the face value. But I have to say that, as I think the panelists have already been introduced, I must commend the MEC in terms of the panel that he's put together. This is tapped into a wealth of experience in terms of government at all levels, in terms of the people that we see making up this panel, as led by the chairperson of the committee, Professor Trevor Fowler. And it's you that I'd like to start with. And I think the most important distinction that as a starting point would be to draw the distinction, because of course we are in the commission season. So every time people hear commission of inquiry, committee of inquiry, they expect the juice to flow. We want to see who's been eating. Yeah. So I'd like you to draw the distinction here between the work of a committee, and not just from a legislative point of view, but from a systems and process point of view, about the difference of work that you as a committee would have done versus that would have been done by a commission of inquiry headed up by a judge or a retired judge.
Okay, thank you very much, Thabisa. And thank you, MEC, for the presentation. And good morning to our colleagues that are here, President Sauda and a colleague from a long time ago, Dr. Makamani. The difference between a committee and a commission is that a commission is mandated in the province by the Premier, and there's also the powers that can be done by the MEC, but in this case it's really a committee. The commission, by process, can in fact subpoena people, meaning that you can ask people to come, and unless they have a doctor's note or something else, or go to court, they have to appear. That's the first part. The second is that they can also subpoena documents, meaning that they can get documents from various institutions. The work that we undertook was really through cooperation of the department and the municipalities. And they provided the information voluntarily. The MEC sent a letter to all of them, first introduced the panel to the political leadership, and then we dealt with mainly the administrative leadership. And once we asked questions by letter, then the municipality responded, and based on the response, we would then meet them and say, well, this issue doesn't quite look the explanation that's given.
Although this was an initiative of the Gauteng provincial government, the issues that they would have traversed and they would have engaged with are certainly not unique to Gauteng. And coming to you, Mr. Sibelale Gadibek, it's important that we acknowledge, of course, you are here in your capacity, not as a mayor necessarily, but of course in your capacity as president of SALGA. And I wanted to get from you a sense from you as well, I mean, having been a part of this and engaged with this process, to say that, in fact, to what extent is the contents of this report, could it be basically a cut and paste of the experience of every other local government at provincial level or even at city level?
Thank you very much, Tabiso. Let me also start by greeting my colleagues. I think one, we must also indicate, besides appreciating the report, I was actually saying to Prof earlier on, they shouldn't have turned the report Gauteng. They should have just set the stage of municipalities across the country, because it fits and defines exactly the challenges that we have. And funny, for Gauteng being known a city of gold and magnanimous lights, hope and economic activity, people tend to forget from a structural point of view that Gauteng also has a burden of poverty. And we see cities being defined as they could be able to fend for themselves. Hence, one of the requirements of the committee talks about the review of the financial architecture of local government, including areas we, from a narrow point of view, we think there's money there, it should be happening, and they can be able to do it themselves. But I think, secondly, a point I must emphasize is that as SALGA and the Gauteng province, COGTA, we work hand in hand, like any other province. I mean, we have coordinated by the department, our technical committees, where our HOD, COGTA, together with our technical staff at SALGA, they will sit and thresh any other challenge that we could have. They are sitting with matters of ESCOM, for example, now. The MEC spoke very little about it. The committee did pick them up. It's not possible to summarize over 180 pages in 10 minutes, which is what the MEC was trying to do. But on a broad range of issues of what makes municipalities to survive, we have that constant work hand in hand, and that's what informs our position from a local government sector on what becomes important for us to move the municipalities into what the Constitution or Dr. Mfawadi wanted to say when he developed the developmental local government. Because for now, there is a huge distinction from what we dreamt to achieve and what reality is putting on the plate. My bit of discomfort is the pace on how we are able to move, particularly with a wing that is supposed to relook into the legislation and overhaul, because I think that's what the system and the reality is calling for, an overhaul, not only in the financial review and the framework, but in also how municipalities in Section 154, example, was anticipated by the Constitution that the department will have, how the funding of the very same departments of COGTA in provinces is structured for them to be able to carry out 154. You know, because you can't support with nothing. Yet they are the smallest. They don't even have a structure that they could be able to send permanently to Western, for example, and CDB for their own fact funding qualitatively on what is happening on the ground on a day-to-day, so that they are able to come up with mechanisms to resolve that. What Prof was saying was that they will write to the municipalities and go and get a response and then go back. Ordinarily, if you look into section 154, its anticipation was that provinces and national should be able to have that high-level birds view in local municipalities, so that the early warning systems are there and we are prompt in responding to problems. Now, they come as an after effect. We use AG mainly as a measure. AG comes after the whole 12 months has passed, and then we try to quickly run and solve the problem and not be able to be real time, as a banker language says. You get a message real time on what is happening on your account. And I think that's what we need to fix now, to ensure that the term starting 2021 to 2026 will see a different local government. Maybe let me conclude on that question by saying there are already pieces of legislation that are sitting for concurrence at NCOP. They may not be to the full dimension of what we wanted to review the Municipal Structures Act and the Systems Act. But for example, to try and deal with the political and the administrative problems, which seems to create political instability. You don't want an official who's a politician and also an official in a municipality. Okay, the MEC said we must not name, but it's okay, I wouldn't name. But there's quite a number of examples where, and this is how we get to be judged harshly and correctly so, of course, by our communities. Because in one, over the weekend, I am a regional chair. On Monday, I am a CFO. And the MM must politically take instructions from me over the weekend. And on Monday, those instructions are incorrect, according to the MFMA. And this is what causes instability in some instances, or vice versa. So we're saying to National Assembly, and they've passed it already, sitting at concurrence, official must be official. And we're giving them, those who have got political role, if passed, only a year to choose one of the two. But it can be. But also let's look into the design of councils themselves. Because political instability at municipalities is huge. The design sits with council. He reports to a portfolio committee, which is chaired separately. MPEC sits at council. You are a ward councillor, you can be an MMC, you can also be a chair of MPEC in same council. So a player and a referee at the same time, you issue instructions to the executive of the administration to do some things as a body of council, but you also sit and say, as a body of council, we took this decision, was it right? Let's take it to MPEC. So you must now relook yourself, contrary to how SCOPA is structured. So even the systems of oversight at local government, there are lines which are flared, and there's quite a lot of overhaul that needs to be done. I think let me stop there for now.
All right, let's come to you, Dr. Mfumalo. You sit there, of course, with the benefit of, or perhaps being the person with the most institutional memory here in terms of the sector of government, local government. And I wonder to what extent this process would have allowed for you to reflect, or what your reflections would be on maybe some of the shortcomings that you were able now to highlight, especially based on the fact that if one reflects on it, there's a lot of the issues that are raised within this report that have basically been that were first identified at the advent of democracy, when we came into a democratic dispensation. So if I could just get a high level sort of reflection on what those observations would be, having been somebody who was involved in the conceptualizing of a lot of this legislation and a lot of these processes that exist.
Yeah, well, if you look at Section 7 of our Constitution, you will see a herald of our national thinking about local government in the post-apartheid South Africa, charging local government with two basic responsibilities, amongst others: the developmental responsibility and the responsibility to deliver basic services to the people. Now, when you talk about a system of government being developmental, you have to exactly to say to yourself, what do we need? A state is defined as developmental if its practitioners are developmental in their aspirations, but also if they are seen to be making the task of achieving developmental goals their day-to-day preoccupation. Now, I hear people saying this is a system which was conceptualized by perfectionists. Of course, you can't be modest in your aspirations and achieve great things if you are modest in your aspirations. What the government of Gauteng has done is what government must do from time to time, because you will find that the system is intended to deliver certain things, but you don't always yield on the ground the things which you envisaged, which then tells you that there is something that you must look at. Therefore, the task of refining the system is a permanent work in progress. What we have just done is not a first. Professor Fowler will tell you that when this system of local government was 6 years old, we instituted a nationwide process of review, diagnostics, which resulted in us coming up with a nationwide coordinated project of support, which was time-bound, whereas indeed there is a constitutional obligation on the two spheres of government, national and provincial, to provide ongoing support to local government. So, in short, I am saying that conceptually we should think about a system as one that requires a periodic rethink. It requires a lot of introspection as well, so that what we are looking at is not just the objective conditions, are they favorable or not. Some of the instabilities that you are talking about are created by us. The instabilities within political organizations, they spill over into the public sphere. So the point I'm really trying to make is that we have to be large in the optical tools that we use to look at the problems we face in local government, but also in the entirety of this three-sphered system of government.
Professor Fowler, if I could just come back to you here. I mean, the Auditor General's report, I would, as the MEC was saying, as I was saying to him in my engagements with him on the radio about this, the idea of setting up this committee was that, are we not guilty of over-diagnosing problems here? And of course, and that was based on the fact that, the Auditor General had already highlighted a lot of the shortcomings at local government level in the report that he released at that point. I was like, so surely we know what the problem is. But now you having engaged a lot closer and when trying to drill a little bit deeper into what would have come out, to what extent is that a misconception to say that we are over-diagnosing a problem? And how is that reflected in terms of what you found in carrying out your work as a committee?
Well, I think the difference, in how we approached it, is that the Auditor General looks at it from a financial perspective. So they say these are the financial problems. The lack of controls. That's why you're not able to ensure wasteful and irregular expenditure. Those kinds of issues. They also look at it from a perspective. They do a review of the performance of the municipality through what the municipality says it's going to do and what it actually does. But it's not their key function. Their key function is around the finances. And so most attention is paid in that area. And what we attempted to do is to look at it through a slightly different lens, really through the lens of the 5 basic functions: the finance, public participation, the institutional capability, the service delivery, and be able then to say from each of these perspectives, what are the challenges that they face, and how do you address those challenges? Because the Audit General will say at the end of each of their audits, they will have a meeting with the mayor, and they will say to the mayor, you know, these problems are problems of leadership. If you read every single Auditor General report, where there are problems there, they say there's a leadership problem. Now, in repeating the same story doesn't necessarily help the municipality to understand what the problem is and how do you address that. And the point that we were making about the vision, if the provincial departments that are there to support local government say, look, this is what we expect local governments to do, not just in terms of achieving the overall vision of the province, of economic transformation, etc. What are the things that they have to do in our particular area, and the targets they must achieve, and how do you get there? And I think that's really the key question. What are the indicators that will allow you to achieve a better health system? All of those kinds of issues.
Yeah. The report goes in quite some depth into the issues around municipal finances and why it is that we experience the failures that we do. One of the things that is a recurring thing, which I suppose to some extent is also linked with issues of leadership, is the lack of capacity in as far as skill, having the correct skills, presiding, particularly financial skills. That you will constantly have these issues that are raised by the Auditor General. If you don't have the right skills there, if your financial directors do not have, the required skills. But then the question is, why do we have these challenges? I mean, often you hear critics of government, particularly the opposition, saying this is a failure because of this policy of cadre deployment and so on. But that surely can't be true. It just seems to me that there is not a shortage of cadres with the right set of skills. So why can't they be deployed there? Or why is it that the right set of skills tend to end up where they are least needed? And I qualify that and put it in inverted commas in the sense that in the metros, you find that's where all the skills are, but that's where the challenges are least, if I can put it there in a rather clumsy way. But so why is that? I mean, this one is for you, Dr. Mado, for you, let me see, in terms of why it is that we can't go and say, listen, your skills are much more needed at local, district municipality level, So that's where we will go and put it. Where do the challenges lie? Even when it comes to the political leadership or whatever, the oversight, why can't we get the people who have had experience like that? Why can't Professor Fowler be a mayor of a district municipality, for example?
Jabiso, we are not, contrary to this fallacy, we are not a human resource rich country.
True.
We are not. You know where this country comes from. You know the devastation that was caused by the system of Bantu education in the country. So I'm saying we have to understand we are not a resource rich country. But secondly, democracy is good, but it does not always give you a leader who is equipped with the necessary skills to discharge the obligations that befall them once they get into these positions. So once we understand that, we will then understand the immensity of the task that we face. I'm not suggesting, therefore, that we are fatally condemned to die as a nation. We need to orient our people to understand that governance is a knowledge-intensive undertaking, and therefore we must embrace the culture of lifelong learning. The culture of lifelong learning. And this is perhaps something we are not doing. You are right. People blame things on COGTA development, and I mean deployment. It will be wrong to depoliticize these responsibilities, because we need leaders who are organic to the national project, who understand in strategic terms what it is that we are trying to do. But they must be paired with another set of leaders who are technically equipped to do what needs to be done in order to make this system deliver to the people. You know, right now we've just we just had a problem that we did not anticipate when we were putting our system of government in place. The pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic. Here is Professor Fowler. I don't know how our system of local government is being equipped, or at least positioned to deal with this problem. This morning I was just reading some work that was done by medical historians. We don't have these modules in our universities.
Yes.
How are we going to recover from the devastation caused by coronavirus if we don't have virologists who can be mobilized by counselors to come and help us cope with the new task that we did not anticipate? So in other words, the skills that we are talking about, quite apart from the technical skills, you would have expected that political parties will field into these positions people who have the experience of social mobilization, so that even if you personally do not have certain skills, you know within your local jurisdiction how to mobilize people who have such skills to augment you in areas where you have shortfalls. And that's the organizing responsibility of political incumbents. But who has sensitized these public representatives about the usefulness of some of the skills that some of them may well have of organizing and so on? They just see themselves as people who must put on ties, like me and Trevor, and put on spectacles and come and speak English in the chambers. When there is a whole resource within your own local jurisdiction which can be mobilized to help us navigate the challenges that we face within our jurisdictions.
And I think, in addition, I agree with what Dr. Mfumadi is saying, but there are other factors. Because I know of few professionals who move from one municipality to the next, or from one department to the next, simply because sometimes they are lazy, sometimes because of corruption. So you commit fraud here,
You're charged,
you are charged, you run away, and all that. So, and some of these people are highly educated, or rather qualified. So it's not just the issue of skill, shortage of skill. There's a combination of factors, and your question is very relevant, but difficult as well, because unlike appointing public servants, municipal managers, CFOs, and all that, at least there you have an opportunity for people to apply. You can interview them, take them through a competency assessment. But you don't have that privilege with the appointment of mayors and MECs. So the fact that you are an MEC, it's not given that you understand what is it that you're supposed to do. So there's that reality.
Yeah. I wanted, like, if we can now bring a conversation to make it more specific to Gauteng. After all, that's what we are here about. So the Auditor General's report back in 2018 and 19 found that out of only one of the 11 municipalities could be categorized as being in good financial health. I mean, 1 out of 11 by any measure is a poor return. But to the point that you were making, that they took a very financial view. That's what the Auditor General's job is. I wonder to what extent as well that also reflects, I mean, the fact is, it's always like this thing about how our departments tend to now celebrate clean audits. Because clean audits are just such a rarity.
Yeah.
But then those clean audits in and of themselves should not be it's not the ultimate measure of the success. And I wonder what the evidence told you of these. Maybe that's if you use the case of that one municipality that achieved, the level of good financial health in the interpretation of the Auditor General. To what extent that's also reflected when it comes to the level of service delivery in those communities. Are the two necessarily is a direct link in terms of if you have poor finances, then or if your financial management is not optimum, that it will also be reflected in the level of service delivery, and vice versa?
Well, I take the view that clean audit is important from a compliance point of view.
Yes.
But we make the point that compliance doesn't mean that you are developmental.
True.
So you have to have a developmental perspective
Exactly.
and ensure that you are able to address the needs. So you can look at the ones that supposedly did financially well, and look at whether or not
mid-VAR versus another. Yeah.
So then look at their ability to deliver services, and those issues are very important to poor people, because people who are financially able are able, if they don't get the service from the community, they can go out and buy it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But people who are poor are bound, captured in the environment that they are. And the question is, how do you link that to their ability to deliver services? So certainly MedVal, from a financial point of view, management point of view, are really quite effective. And they've got a number of developmental areas that they're doing. They're attracting some investment in the area. But the importance is, does it have an impact on the people that poor people in the area? And it varies from municipality. So you take a municipality like Ekurhuleni, which also does very, very well. But it has a huge backlog of services that it has to meet. And it hasn't been able to meet it as yet because of the large backlog and the finances that are available to them. So Johannesburg also has a backlog, but they have the capability of generating significant amount of finances to be able to address it. And those are the kinds of challenges that people don't understand when you're looking at the various municipalities. So you can't compare Johannesburg with Ekurhuleni in many respects, because Johannesburg has 75% of all the corporate head offices in the country.
The country,
It's not in Ekurhuleni.
Yeah.
And they are spin-offs. So So the question is, how do you address it? And it really has to be from a support point of view that you have to be able to address it. Because it's not possible to address some of the backlogs by the municipality themselves, even if it is a metro. Right? But you take the metros, their financial capability, their institutional capability is far greater than the smaller municipalities. So if you take a situation with Mfuleni, for instance, which was not able to repair its the pumps, etc., and raw sewage was going into the river, and that's the same river from which we get our drinking water, and they had to call in the army. But nobody looks back at in 2015 you could see this happening. But as early as in 1998, there was an economic decline. And was there sufficient economic support from the province to turn that around? So it's been a 20-year decline. They've lost all of their businesses. They've lost all of and it's largely because they were dependent on ISCO. And ISCO then employed 14,000 people. They now employ 2. Those 14,000 would support about 140,000 people. Right? So, and then there are businesses, downstream businesses from there that are there. So you have to look at the full context of how you get there. And that, I think, is where we're saying that the support from the province can't just be COGTA. It's got to be from the economic departments that are there.
And you've been nodding vigorously there, President, because I would imagine these are things that resonate with you as somebody who's also a mayor of a municipality that would face a lot of the challenges that are faced by the smaller municipalities within Gauteng.
Yeah, well, I think Dr. Mufamadi and the MEC were rather a bit candid to know about the issues of skills attraction. Local government doesn't pay. Very difficult to attract the skill that you want. It has a grading system.
Assuming that the skill is out there, to Dr. Mufamadi's point.
The smaller you are, the poorer you are, you are condemned to remain small and remain poor. A chartered accountant that is employed by the city of Johannesburg gets around 1.6, 1.7 marketing value of a salary. The one that would want to be appointed by Amatole district municipality will be getting far less than that, because Amatole is graded as Eastern Cape rural, and the grade is relatively free where municipalities sit in rural areas. That is why the MEC was talking about a one-size-fits-all, even in Gauteng, because there are disparities that Prof spoke about, that there's a contrast between the city of Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, for example, within the very same province. So you may find that you need to give a bit of more financial support, capacity support to Ekurhuleni, contrary to how we are giving the support to the city of Johannesburg. So we need to move out of the system. Unfortunately, local government is wall-to-wall, the size of the ward and everything, put into one basket, and then you are categorized. There are 8 metros. There's a huge difference between city of Johannesburg and Buffalo City. Yet there are 8, there are metros. Mangaung now is under administration because it also faced the same economic decline and is unable to recover. So you then find the skill, even when you advertise into the external platform and call the world, come and assist me. You receive 11 applications, you know, and you look into these, 5 of them are interns at a particular local department or something, and you will re-advertise and re-advertise and re-advertise again. I've experienced it personally in a municipality, which is the biggest in Limpopo. Now, that's the first part. So it may want us at a broader level just deal with this one-size-fit-all approach. But secondly, Prof did speak, and the MEC did touch on it. strongly the issue of ensuring that the capacity, in fact, and Dr. Mufamadi did touch on that. How do you design the capacity that is meant to have a person who's developmental, outwardly link all the key aspects of what makes a municipality? Is a municipality which is strong in its agricultural base, for example, its TVET, exclusively dealing with agricultural training to enhance the market so that the municipality grows. So there's a bit of some disjuncture that we need to align far even beyond what municipal or outside the municipal boundary itself or the municipal legislated area, but to ensure that it enhances the area that the municipality operates under and ensures that it becomes developmental. Because then the funding comes and say, you are at this grade, therefore we're going to be able to give you this little because you come in. And the municipalities, for example, and I always speak about saying, when the president was saying to me the other day, I really want to go to this municipality. You speak about it so much. 8 clean audits in a row. Deep rural Eastern Cape, level 3. So what are we punishing them for? If really a clean audit is a good measure of performance and deliver, why don't we then say you have passed the test? Let's give you more, give you assessment on what your baseline is of poverty versus the delivery of basic services, and monitor you to remain in the clean accountability box and you deliver more services. So I think there is that which needs to be meshed and create one to make sure that municipalities are sustainable.
I'm mindful of time because I want to give an opportunity, because the idea was that we also wanted to give an opportunity to those who are joining our broadcast online to put questions, and also to the members of the media who are here. I wanted to give them an opportunity to be able to put questions directly to our panel. But before we do that, I just wanted to touch on something very quickly with you, Professor Fowler, relating that came out of the report, which I found very interesting, and I wonder. I guess it also speaks to, and you can have a word. You can also have a word on the issue of the district and municipalities here. Then we have this curious situation, and I don't know what that is a reflection of. Perhaps to yourself and Dr. Mufamadi, you can explain to me what that's about, where you have, from an oversight point of view and accounting point of view, is that the metros, from a financial point of view, are reported to national. Whereas the district municipalities go to the provincial government. What is the thinking there? I just want to understand how that actually works and how that impacts even.
In fact, before it comes in, there is no such. When I came in, I was told. In fact, when we dissolved Twan, people said, "What are you doing? You don't have that power."
Right.
I said, "No, we have it because the law says we can do it as a province." So the problem is people don't read and they don't know what are their responsibilities, and then they take rumors and go around saying, "No, it's not us, it's national," and all that. So there is no such. Yeah.
Well, so okay. Just what is the reality there when it comes to that?
I think we raised the same point.
Yes.
The point we're making is that you see, the National Treasury looks at things from a revenue, national revenue point of view. And so they have then taken a position that the metros in 29 municipalities around the country, which generate 80% of the revenue, they will support directly. So they bypass the province and they support directly. Whereas they then leave the municipalities with less
resource and capacity
to the province to support. So it means that you then created a bit of a difficulty.
Absolutely.
And so that really is the key question that you have to look at. The point we're making is that you have to ensure that provincial governments have the capacity to support. They have the research capability, they have that capacity. And Treasury, which has now taken that responsibility, needs to ensure that they make sure the resources are available to the provinces to provide that support. Because constitutionally, the only people that can intervene is the province. National can't intervene into a municipality. It's a province that must intervene. National, no matter what it wants to do, has to go to the MEC. If they want to do something in Fulani, they've got to go to the MEC and say, please intervene here.
Yeah.
So it's that's the point we were really trying to make in that section.
Okay. All right. Maybe I should at this point, let's start with, maybe started with those who are here with us. We have members of the media that are joining us. If you want to put very direct questions to the panel, I'll give you this opportunity before we open it up to those that are joining us online. So, see, you've got some people behind me. Please come this side, chaps, so we can see you. I won't be able to see you when you're behind me. Please
These
come
ones
this-
want headlines. So
Yeah.
they're,
the sound bites.
yeah, their questions are
All right. Okay, so Madunga, you can go first. Do they need a mic? Do they need a microphone? Or is it fine? But you can project. Yeah, yeah.
My name is Malungelo from Nation Africa.
Oh, podium, okay.
My name is Malungelo from Nation Africa. I just want, Professor Fowler, I just want to get an understanding. Are people or leaders in municipalities, do they understand their roles and responsibilities here in Gauteng? Can you sort of like help me understand whether they do understand their roles and responsibilities, considering the fact that some of the municipalities are collapsing?
All right, shall we take Daizo?
It's Ndaizo from Power FM. This one goes to the MEC. MEC, political instability has been picked up as one of the key issues from the top that need to be addressed. Some would argue that that's what caused problems around Swane and the city of Joburg. And others would even go to the extent of saying that the MEC also played a part in that political instability. What would your...
That's the Power FM I know, that's the Power FM angle.
What would your response to that be? And maybe beyond that, how would you then, using the two metros that I put as examples, use that to try as COGTA to find common ground with local municipalities, especially the big metros, on how to stabilize leadership at that level? Thank you.
All right. Please, John.
Thank you. My name is Govan from ENCA. Just Professor Fowler, on the report that you're releasing today, which would you say are the worst performing municipalities that you've assessed the state of affairs? Which municipality is in the worst state? Which municipality is in the best state? And then I want to know if there's any municipality within Gauteng that the others should be looking to emulate in the way that they conduct their business. Now that you've authored this report and assessed the state of affairs of the municipalities, and you have the benefit of hindsight, would you say that, considering what was happening in Tshwane, the decision at that time to dissolve was the right one?
Absolutely.
And then, President Kadimeng, you were talking about the conflation between the political office bearer and the municipal office bearer, and you made reference to legislation, I believe, which you said would address this. Do we currently have legislation that's about to be passed which would preclude political office bearers from holding those government positions, or as the president of SALGA, is that something that you're campaigning for within our democracy? And then, MEC, just finally, you were the one that commissioned this report. Ultimately, these municipalities are reporting to you. There's been a point made about the National Treasury's oversight of metro municipalities versus your department's oversight of the local municipalities. Do you want to oversee these metros as well? Do you, as MEC, believe, or is it the ANC's position in government that the National Treasury's oversight of those municipalities should happen through your department? Or do you believe that the situation as it stands is fine? Thank you.
All right. Great. Let's pause it there. Who wants to go first? Who wants to go first, Professor? I'm not sure which of those questions you want to start with.
Okay.
Or do you want to go first, ABC, as well? Because I think it would be important also to get your perspective and from the Tshwane experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. No,
okay.
Yeah.
The questions asked by do leaders understand their role? I think the MEC addressed part of that question. You know, leaders are elected, and then they are elected by the municipality, the council, as mayors. Now, the question that you have to ask is that they are elected there because they understand community issues. They understand what the needs of communities are. Then you come into an organization that is fairly complex because, as indicated, there are many regulations. If you count the number of reports, they have to report to several institutions monthly, right? And so the question then comes is, are they then able to address the complexity of the situation there? Now, municipal managers are hired to do that job, but they're employed by the political leadership. So the political leadership must understand the complexity of the situation and understand that the municipal manager you hire must be able to do that. It's not about that municipal manager meeting the needs of this particular community or that particular section of the community. They are to serve all people, but they must have a developmental approach that ensures that the money they collect from people who are able to afford is able to be redistributed in a way that poor people, lives are changed and bettered. That's what our Constitution says. And that's what they are required to do. So, in many respects, leaders are not necessarily prepared for that. And that's one of the things you need to ask political parties. How do you prepare mayors to understand those issues?
Leaders are not necessarily managers either.
Yes, but they're not expected to be managers, but you have to you have to employ the right managers, and you have to ask the right questions of those managers to ensure that things happen.
Right.
So, for instance, around VBS, some municipal manager went haywire, making all kinds of deals, but the mayors weren't aware. So the question is, how is that possible to happen? And you've got to make sure that those things are addressed. The next issue around the political instability in Tshwane. You know, the one thing I must say about Tshwane is that people are elected to serve their constituencies. You can't bring a municipality to its knees because you can't agree on who the municipal manager is. You've got to find a way to talk to each other to ensure that happens. Even if you come from political parties, you all have the same objective. The objective is to serve the people.
You wanted to pick up on that?
Yeah, no. The political instability in the municipalities, it's not only as a result of coalition governments. Sometimes there's political contradictions in the parties that are governing, and those contradictions find expression in the municipality and all that. With regard to Tshwane, the good thing about Tshwane, and I think Tshwane will make a very good case study in future, because when you read the judgments, and I always say to the to our critics, read the judgments, because the judges, at least they're not in our space, and there is nowhere in the judgments. Remember, there's been about 3 judgments. So there is no way where they say the MEC has caused political instability or the provincial government, or we're not supposed to do this or that. In fact, the reason why we went to the Supreme Court of Appeal is because the High Court said there is instances where the municipality did not exercise its executive responsibility. And they cite, I think, 2. And the Constitution says you can dissolve if a municipality, if they don't exercise the executive. So we found that to be contradictory. And hence we went to the Supreme Court of Appeal to appeal the judgment, but ultimately we went to the Concord to say, clarify this matter, because it has a huge implication for the relationship of provincial governments and the municipalities in future. And by the way, even with Tshwane, we never wanted to dissolve Tshwane. To dissolve, we're actually having a discussion earlier, or to intervene in the municipality, it's a huge burden. I was telling Dr. Mfumadi and the president, what the DA did in Tshwane, they gave the residents my numbers. So every time there's a problem there, I'll be phoned by residents. So you can imagine the load that I'm dealing with already, in addition with that. So we don't want to run municipalities. We shouldn't even think about running, because municipalities are a different sphere of government. There is a leadership there. There is legislation in terms of how things must be done. What we should do is to have a good relationship with them, is to play our oversight role, is to provide the support. And that support, in fact, when the president was speaking about, there's something I wanted to pick up. The support should not just be just coming to tell the municipality you are not doing this or that. In fact, in Mfuleni now, one of the things was we've realized that the municipality does not have financial capacity to do certain things. Instead of us giving the municipality money, we are directly putting money in service. For instance, through our Department of Roads, we are fixing roads there.
Instead of giving it to the municipality.
Instead of giving the municipality. So we will continue to solve the internal problems of the municipality, but the residents on the ground must not suffer. Waste management, in terms of our Department of Agriculture and Environment, we are putting about 53 million to sort out waste, because as you can go there, it's a disaster. You can't let people live there and then explain why it can't be done. So the intervention of the provincial government should not be about explaining to people why things are not done. It should be to ensure that we solve those issues. So on the Tshwane issue, we can have a discussion, but look at what the judges are saying. And by the way, the matter is not concluded. The Constitutional Court is yet to pronounce itself.
Yes. There was another question, I think, from Govan that I think you had to address. I think that what was speaking to the best performing municipalities, I suppose in this case, if we're going to base it on the Auditor General, who will be one. But even if it doesn't come down to the fact that, as you say, there's no one size fits all, there must be cases of best practice that can be applied across the board.
Yes. No, I think the key question about the worst performing municipality, and I suppose people would expect me to say Mfuleni, but it's not Mfuleni. They still deliver services to people. It is in fact a municipality that is in a situation not of their own making. It's a municipality called Rand West. It is a municipality which was Randfontein and Western area that were amalgamated together. The amount of money that were given for the amalgamation wasn't adequate to address their problems. So as a consequence, they have serious problems now because there's demands that they must pay salaries at a much higher level. There was a 5-week strike, no services for those 5 weeks.
So the higher level because of the regrading.
Because of the regrading.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. So two municipalities then became a higher grade, so therefore they had to pay more salary.
Higher grade with less resources.
With less resources.
Or without an allocation of the commensurate resources.
Yeah. Does that happen in my municipality as well?
and so that is and it's not really of their own making.
Sure.
They're having serious problems in that area. Then in terms of best municipality, it's very difficult to say which one is the best, because it depends on what you are measuring. If you're measuring just the management of it, and having municipal managers in place, etc., you probably would say Medva. But then there are areas like Ikuruleni, which also is a huge municipality, but financially they are doing fairly well. It's just in this year, 2021, where they may go into a deficit. And they specifically do very well in public participation. Or if you take the city of Johannesburg, which financially has been doing, is doing okay, they have the best performance management system that you could learn from in other municipalities. So you can't just take one aspect. It's really about, if you look at the various aspects there are of different municipalities. Tshwane has been very difficult to measure because of the current situation, but historically they have also been performed fairly well in certain areas. But there are some areas where it has declined.
Yeah.
Maybe just a quick one. What Gavin asked about the National Treasury. Look, we are a unitary state, so that's the starting point. Meaning, we don't have a problem with national government coming to the province, intervening. We are working with them, in fact. So that issue doesn't arise for us. If they are here, even better, because they are bringing resources, skills, and all other things. But it shouldn't be skewed, the assistance. It must be spread across the country.
But the issue that arises, though, is that you see, if we have got a fragmented system of support, then things will not come right.
Absolutely.
So if you've got COGTA as a national department, that is a point agency for support that comes from national government. COGTA should be able, on the basis of evidence, to say this is a group of municipalities across the country which must get this kind of support. The resources for providing this kind of support can be found within the departments nationally that are either in this cluster, or you just identify them as relevant municipalities in respect of the particular function for which municipalities require support, right? And then they interact with provincial government. You will actually find that that also becomes a basis on which they reorganize themselves. Because as you say, nominally they've got a responsibility to support. Are they organized in such a way that they can actually effectively provide that support? So there is a lot of coordination that must happen. In some cases, it ought to be possible for Durban municipality to support a smaller municipality in KwaZulu-Natal that requires some type of support, which...
If we are that unitary state, why not?
That's right.
That's right. In fact, Doctor,
I remember talking to...
It's very important,
to
that point.
the people of Buffalo City. That is the second largest township, Danzane, after Soweto. Yeah. It took Johannesburg a very short space of time to tar all the streets and roads in Soweto. Yeah. I go to Danzane on the occasion of the funeral of Paxman Katlan. Danzane looked exactly like the Danzane I was in 1981. So I say, but get together with Johannesburg, because if we make a dent here, second largest township in the country, this is how you touch the lives of the people.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm saying that this silo mentality, either vertically or horizontally,
and we don't
a drawback.
Yeah, one would think we also don't have the privilege of being able to operate like that, because of the skills deficit that you spoke of before. If we had an equal distribution of capacity and resource base, perhaps you could. But you wanted to add something.
And I think the metros have got, better, because they can pay more. So they are better capacitated. And in fact, what Dr. Mfumari is saying, we are already activating it now in Mfuleni, because we have come to the realization that you've got management that is sabotaging the intervention. So we thought, why not just bring Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni? Because Ekurhuleni, they're doing well in terms of revenue generation. Let's bring that capacity. That municipality is owed close to 10 billion. They owe SCOM and Randwater just above 4 billion. So it means if they were to collect, they are not a municipality that is in distress. But because there are no systems, there's inefficiencies, we are not able to collect what is owed to the municipality. So that point that Dr. Mfumad is raising, I think is very important. And unfortunately, we don't have to wait for the municipality to collapse in order to ask another municipality to intervene. We need to be able to have what we call programs that can be an exchange program. Yes, right. Exchange program between municipalities.
Let me share with some of what has come through online. This one was a comment from a Dingyuko G who says, I fully concur with the MEC because leadership deficiency in municipalities is causing serious challenges, and as a province, it is therefore not easy for us to provide the necessary support as required to such municipalities. Then on Zoom, I have one question for you, the MEC, that says, please ask MEC to expand around the view that an open tender will eliminate the current UIFW expenditure. That's, unauthorized, irregular, and what's the F4 again?
Fruitless.
Fruitless and wasteful expenditure. There you go.
Yeah, well, if you look at these compliance issues, fruitless, wasteful expenditure, in most cases, it's a result of people not complying, firstly. People not, for instance, you find that they have awarded somebody a tender to provide water or whatever, and they did not, those people did not provide tax clearance. And they are able to do that because no one is looking. But if it's an open tender system, what it means is that firstly, there would have to be probity auditors who are external people. And secondly, the public will be allowed to come and participate in the process, or to rather, what is it, not necessarily participate, but to observe, you know. So no one is going to do wrong things because if there is no tax clearance, the probity auditors will say this company can pass. And we're not saying it would be a panacea to the problems, but it will go a long way in making sure that there is accountability, there is transparency, and in fact the law, the constitution dictates that there must be transparency when you deal with supply chain issues, there must be accountability, there must be fairness, it must be effective, it must be competitive. So introducing this system will basically help us get towards dealing with these principles that are enshrined in the Constitution.
But of course, Tabiso, assuming that our communities will also be matured, because you call me to observe, at gunpoint I run with the box.
It may create other problems.
Yes, no, it has happened. I mean, in Limpopo we had a box of a school feeding tender. So you assume that all pieces will sit where they are supposed to be, and you'll have an outcome.
Right.
I like how the MEC puts it, that he's not saying it's a panacea. It will solve and resolve maybe the transparency, the fairness issue, but it may create other problems. And then you will say to him, why are you opening it? Because now you have to hire bodyguards to guard the box and whatever, it's the most of money and whatever. So we need collaboration. That's what local government needs. Everybody, including the community, they must play their part to make a municipality workable.
It's one of the
Yes. I just wanted to add one thing on Tuan, and I think all of us need to. Prof said to basically go back and do what the MEC say. We're looking at Tuane's problem right at the end, not where they started.
Right.
Amalgamation was the biggest problem of Tuan. Let me stop it there.
I wanted to ask though, on the issue of Tshwane, and I want to understand why, as a ratepayer in Tshwane, should the theatrics that happen in council chambers affect services to me? Why should it make a difference? Yes, in terms of the allocation of money that is spent on my particular area, that may be a direct result of those discussions and debates that happen in council. But at an operational level, the fact that the mayor has been removed or there's a new mayor that voted in shouldn't change whether my dustbin gets collected or not. And I wonder whether that comes ideally, of course, in an ideal world. Yes. Yeah. But why is it that it is not? And this whole thing of professionalization of the public sector, I wonder whether that would make a difference. What does it speak to it? I mean, I wonder what you found, and MEC, you can also.
Yeah, and the panel members will add. If you look at the local government legislative architecture, it says the municipality, the council, council, not the municipality, council, meaning councillors,
yes,
are a legislative and in fact, the executive and legislative authority lies with them, with council. So, why it will affect you is that council must pass the budgets, council must receive reports and all that. So some of the things can be done by the municipal manager and his or her team without the council having to resolve those issues.
It is actually illegal,
yes,
to spend a cent as a municipal manager when council has not approved the budget. There's even a timeline. I think it's 31st May. So anything you do on the 1st of June, it's illegal. No matter how much you want to pick up that waste, no matter how much as a MM you want to fix that electrical globe, street light, it's illegal. And it goes directly in the AG's book as irregular expenditure. So there's a whole connection.
So that's why council must function properly.
Council must sit.
Yes. And that's why the MEC of COGTA should be worried if council is not functioning properly.
So what the law says, you can only ask for an extension of a month of that June as a mayor, because the council's report is an executive or mayor's report. So we have failed to meet the 31st target. There is a reprieve for just 1 month, I think, to the end of June. At the end of June, he is dereliction in his duty now, because we are not functional.
I wonder whether that's not something that also needs to be relooked at.
Well, we are trying to.
In the current environment, we are beholden basically to whatever happens with the politicians, because we are in a situation where coalitions may well be a reality for the foreseeable future.
You see, the Constitution is the one that created it.
Yes.
But you must understand the reason it was there is that you are dealing with tiny municipalities that may only have 10 councillors. They can't have separation of powers and all of that because it's tiny. So the executive and legislative authority lies with them because they are actually running the municipality. But when it comes to a metro, that's when the problems of oversight and all these come into place. And there was legislation that was put in place to try to create this separation of mayors, executive mayors, etc., and separate this conflict of or the separation of powers, where the executive powers lie with the council, and also the probity powers. It can't work because it's. But in the legislation, it tries to separate it by creating an executive mayor or an executive committee that is separated.
Okay. This is an important one as we draw to a close, and I'm hoping that those that asked questions were covered, and maybe I'll just give two more opportunities if there is somebody who wanted to add something. But this was an important point, maybe which we can reserve for last, and this was also one that came through online saying, can the panel reflect on the new phenomenon of what I refer to as over-investigation, which I think is what I refer to as over-diagnosis of issues. And this is because the AG will audit, which may be tantamount to investigations, and find wrongdoing. But instead of corrective measures, municipalities will duplicate resources without remedies. So before I get a conclude, because I think that it's a kind of a good point in which to wrap up the conversation. You covered?
No, it's just a quick follow-up on something that you touched on, but I don't think it was elaborated on.
Yeah.
An example of that is what's happening in the city of Joburg now. This morning, in fact, we had a conversation on power where you've got political offices being made permanent staff. One may look at it from different sides of the coin to say it may address one of the issues there, which is instability. But the others would look at it on the other side of the coin, which may cause stability, depending on who's governing. So what's your view, maybe to Trevor Paula or you, MEC, or even the President, on how does it work? How do you think it will work where you've got junior staff members belonging to certain political parties now being made permanent? You've got local government elections coming next year, where you will have a different, or you may have a different governing party there. Would that not cause instability, or would it actually cause stability, because you've got people that understand the system from a different governing party, but will be able to execute it going further, even if it's a different party?
Okay, for me, there's two things, maybe the panel will add. So I want to separate them. The first one is with regard to what is happening in Johannesburg now. I hope you have read the statement of the mayor. I saw the statement of the mayor because I was on the verge of writing him a letter to ask what is this? You can't do this. So, but we will still write him a letter, by the way, so that he explains properly. And you know, when we write
What is he saying?
when he's disputing, yes, he's disputing it, but we would want all the details. But he's also saying no.
But I think there was clarity on it, MEC, in the sense that he said, even his spokesperson is saying that junior staff members who are from political offices will be appointed.
No, that's what I'm saying. When I read the statement, he was saying two things. That yes, some of those are in the political office. Right. Some of them are in the, and they're junior, they are not managerial, but we will still come to that issue. So we will attend to it. That's the first thing. The second thing, and I think the three panelists will deal with this matter even better, will articulate it better than me. But my understanding and my belief is that, you see, bureaucracy or the administration, what we call as administration, there has to be predictability there. There has to be professionalism. There has to be integrity. And that's why when you recruit people, they must be skilled, qualified, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got the side of government, which is ourselves, who are there for 5 years. So whether the ANC loses power tomorrow or not, this part, the bureaucracy, should not be tempered to. Yes. Because when positions are advertised, your political affiliation is not a requirement. So you could be an ANC person or an
ideally.
Yeah?
It's not a requirement, as in it's not a written requirement.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. You know now. We have just hired a lady who's in the Western Cape government. Now, we don't know her. She came to the interview. She's a civil engineer. She's doing a good job. We did reference checks. So we don't want to know, because if we were using that as a requirement, firstly we'll say, hey, she works in the Western Cape. Why does she work? So it's not there. And at least I know I'm amongst many who don't require that, because we want a skill. We want to deliver. We will not be able to deliver if we are just going to bring our friends into government. It doesn't work that way. In fact, that will take us out of power. If we're serious about remaining in power, it means we must be competent, we must deliver, and we must prove the public wrong. So we can't do it if we're going to bring our friends.
All right, let's do it this way. Governor, I'll give you an opportunity finally, and then what I'll do is that I'll get all of you to do your concluding remarks. There was another. Okay. Sorry, I didn't see you. There's a light.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Ayanda Mketwa from the Daily Maverick. I think my question is simple. We've deliberated enough on the problems, diagnosis. What are the solutions? That's all I want to know. And maybe MEC, you can deliberate on some of the recommendations and how far you've gone in terms of implementing some, because you mentioned in your opening address that it's something that you have started working on. Thank you.
Right. Good.
Yeah, just on clarity, President, on the legislation.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay. All right. So shall we do that then? Start. I think that the question that she asked speaks to the one that I read, which came from online, that we have done the diagnosis. But let's start with you, maybe responding.
Okay, sorry, Gavin, I noted it and I jumped it. Yes, we are currently sitting with the Municipal Structures Act, passed by the National Assembly, awaiting concurrence at the NCOP. We are anticipating that we should, at the resumption of the new term of council, will be able to a certain extent to separate the powers, ideally as it has been defined now, on how council is housed, but also what will be the participation of administration politically, because we are at the coal face. So you could check, you should be able to find the new clause. I think it's 17.5 clause. I will share with you outside. But as I conclude on my part and our view, quite a lot has been done actually. From SALGA point of view, in collaboration with provinces, besides the local framework, which we have already made submission over in terms of finances, taken through by the cabinet to the FFC, approved by the FFC, also awaiting its way to go to the National Assembly to look into the different categorization, so that Rand West, for example, receives what it categorically needs to get to provide the services, taking into consideration the problems that they would have had coming from an amalgamation, because municipalities are not the same. So to deal with this financial one-size-fits-all, there is leadership and capacity. We may be termed careerists, but we have approached all political parties as SALGA. We have also tabulated it at the NCOP to request that can they put requirements for councillors as well. Because yes, we may be coming from a political level, but the budget of Eguruleni is around 74 billion, right? I need to understand the basics, because I'm a council. I'm the one who must approve it. I'm the one who must decide how much must go to roads with all the... I'm the one who must ensure that there is this revenue generation that is needed. We have put that. Political parties are warm to it, because we have trained, for example, all the MPECs in the country now. But we were open to the portfolio committee that we are not confident that our councillors can be able, chairing and sitting at MPEC, to really, according to the legislation, do what oversight at council is supposed to be, besides the separation of powers, capability, at what we are having now. We are lucky. I think the silver lining is that we are going into the next. In terms of provinces assisting us to train those councillors as they come in August, September, yes, we will be able to do that. All the legislation is prepared, local government library and all that, to ensure that we go into this developmental state. But we need to be able to move a movable horse. So otherwise, if it's not, then we will have problems. I think, let me leave it here for other members. They will talk on quite a lot, on what is being done, which unfortunately seems to be legislative, because that's where most of the problems of local government comes from. Even this corruption we're talking about is a systemic problem. If the systems are right, it will be very difficult for anybody to take a council or a council funds and not utilize them to where they are supposed to be. But currently, the way the situation is, and how the legislation allows me to sit one day and say, you move to that side, and again I put another term of people and sit in council and say, no, we are still going to think what exactly is your charge, but for 90 days can you go home? We will come back to you. So there's too much power which is sitting in one area which can't actually be legislated, has not been legislated properly, and it has tended to be abused. And then you will deal with what Dr. Mufamadi has said.
Do you concur? I want to
Educate
give you the last
country.
word as chairperson of the committee.
No, I just wanted to deal with the one issue which came up earlier. I think we need to avoid a mechanical separation about competences. You see, these are political office bearers, there are managers there. You can't give strategic leadership to people who are doing a function which you know absolutely nothing about. Therefore, people who are political office bearers must at least have an idea of how the system works and how it should work. And local government should be seen as a very important training ground. The fact that councillors are expected to execute both legislative and executive functions, that is really the best opportunity for training people who can either go one day into administration or into other spheres of government, either on the side of the executive or the legislative side. As I was saying, we are not a country which is endowed with excessive human resources. And we should not go about it as if things can just work on the basis of separate tracks all the way from the ground upwards. So it's important to have this nuance in mind when we are looking at what can work for us.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Yeah, over to you, the chairperson.
I think the point that I wanted to address about the question that came in online about whether we are just investigating. No, in fact, with each one of the challenges, we make recommendations. So, for example, in Tswane, there are no ward committees. Yet in every other municipality, there are ward committees. And that has been the case for 3 years. So we're saying the province must find a way to ensure that there are ward committees, because people are being denied their democratic participation. It's an important issue. Unfunded budgets.
Yes.
Unfunded budgets are passed by councils, and councils, it's illegal for them to do. And
yet it keeps happening, it's a recurring thing.
It keeps happening. The province sends them letters, say this is illegal, but we have to find a solution for it. Around tariffs, the capacity perhaps to develop the correct tariffs are not there, and we need support for tariff modeling and how rates should be set up, etc. Some of those are quite complex things. So, for instance, in Johannesburg, they don't really determine the tariffs around, the rates. They bring in experts to assist them in that regard, because it's an expert requirement. So we make recommendations around all of them. And the only way to address this is we've got to ensure that everybody takes the responsibility to do it. Communities must take the responsibility to hold councils accountable. The councillors must make sure that they hold the administration accountable, and the city managers must make sure they ensure that these things happen. So everybody has their responsibilities, and if we work collectively, we can improve the way the delivery of in municipalities, and we can improve service delivery in the province quite significantly.
Let me see if I can let you have the final word. You have been presented with a report now. I know there's a timetable set out as well in terms of how you are going to implement and that sort of thing. I would imagine there are amongst the recommendations low-hanging fruit in terms of where your starting point would be. Just talk to us about the approach then, and to speak to the point of the question that was asked about we have diagnosed and diagnosed again. Where to now?
this point about diagnosing and diagnosing, you know, I think we're sitting with scholars of Marxism, so they will tell you that the conditions we live in are not static, and also don't choose under which conditions we want to find ourselves in. We have to always understand these conditions. So that is why it is important that from time to time we seek to understand the nature of the people. Sometimes we want to deal with issues without understanding and doing that proper diagnosis. So every municipality is unique, and some of these problems, though sometimes they appear the same, but they evolve, they take different shapes and all that. So it is important that when you have a responsibility, before you take decisions, before you make a determination, you understand the nature of the issue you are dealing with. Otherwise, tomorrow we'll be saying we don't know why this or that. We can't, when we have been given a responsibility, which is a privilege to lead our people. So we're doing that because we understand that we don't have a privilege of being reckless. So we have to be sure of all these issues that we're dealing with. So that's one of the issues. But also, you have a lot of laws, especially in the local government space. If somebody is accused, for instance, for being responsible for irregular, wasteful expenditure, you can't just fire that person, because irregular expenditures also takes different forms. You might find that the person has actually bought wrong water. The specifications said they want something else, and then you bought Valpre. It doesn't mean you have money has been stolen. You know. So sometimes when you say there is regular, why are you not acting? Why are you not firing these people? So you might find that you need to have a process for this person to explain why they've done this, and you might just have to just give them a warning. It's not about firing and all. But sometimes we don't explain these things. And as politicians, I think during elections, in most cases, we play to the gallery. These ones have a regular expenditure of this, wasteful, but we don't explain them in context, and it creates an impression. But I'm not saying there are no wrong things that are happening. There's a lot of wrong things. I'm in government. I mean, we see them every day. There's a fellow we had to fire in 5 days without following disciplinary hearings, because he had done so much damage that, in the eyes of the public, we would be unforgiven if we don't act against that fellow. And we've done it, and we will continuously do it. But as a developmental state as well, we also have a responsibility to also develop the people who work for the state and help them, rehabilitate them, because we need better, capable states or governments, and in this case I'm referring to the different spheres and all that, if we're to solve these problems. Because otherwise, Tabiso, if we don't, we are going to end up like many other countries I can't mention who are in terrible states. So I have hope, because I always say it seems this is a struggle between the good and the bad people. So the good people must stay the course, must fight hard and be relentless, because they are doing a good thing. And I want to believe that we are part of the good people, all of us well. So we must fight against the bad people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, MEC, to the panel in this entirety. I think one of the things that I underestimate, it is a sizable report, 180 odd pages. They're very detailed in terms of what it goes into. It didn't even begin to scratch the surface. I think we really did just scratch the surface. One of the main things that we never really even got to reflect on is the challenges that it now is presented to local government municipalities, not just in Gauteng, but nationally, in as far as how their revenues are going to be impacted by the pandemic that we are currently living through, and which is likely to be with us. It is something that is addressed in the report quite extensively. I would urge you that if this is an area of interest, in fact, it should be an area of interest for all of us, since local government is the core face of service delivery. our lives are impacted more by what is done at local government level than what happens in Cape Town at Parliament and so forth. So I would urge that people do take the opportunity to at least, you know, there will be sections that you can read on and see what the thinking is and what the recommendations of the panel is. So once again, thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to the chairperson here and you who have stayed with us for this period. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was long, eh?
It was
almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
Not bad. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Don't forget your mic,
Yeah.
so it's falling.
Hey, I read it.
Hey,